Hello, everyone. This is Bibi for discussion number two. So, question number one I am going to address tonight is: does widespread reliance on peer appeals make audiences more responsive, more resistant, or simply numb to emotional persuasion? Well, the use of peer appeals can make audience resistant or responsive or even ignore about the message. It really depends on the context and what the message is about and how the audience will receive it. So the peer appeals depends on how it really affects the audience or someone or perhaps can how they care about the message or how they want to receive or process the message and what's the impact to them. So it's not one size fits all. So if an individual evaluates the message clearly and carefully, um, if he thinks that it could be beneficial to them and they have a capability to do it, they are more likely to take actions. The audience can be more responsive. So, according to Allen and Witt's 2000, they have found that the stronger fear appeals of the audience is the higher persuasive, uh, more likely to take place. So, meaning it's a positive change if that would happen. However, it could also fear appeals also control a response, such as denial, could defensive response. Like someone would say, it will not, or it won't happen to me, or I don't want to think about it. Or they could be reactants. So responsiveness when people feel fear and believe that they can take effective action, and resistance uh, when fear is higher, but they are unable to take actions. They can deny or they can reject the message. Um, the last one is numb or desensitized when the message, when the audience is repeatedly or constant or has a frequent exposure to the that type of message that feel appears over time, then that could make the audience less responsive or less uh, reduce their sensitivity. So, second question is: how should we think about the limits of emotional persuasion when audiences hold strong pre-existing concerns or mistrust? So, really, it's hard to convince someone if they already have that something in their mind, like they already have that strong opinion about something. Those are the type of people that are really hard to convince, regardless of how you craft your message or strategically design your message. So some cases there are people that are really hard to convince. So emotional persuasion can still have, however, yeah, persuasion can still have an effect. However, its impact is very limited when audience hold this pre-existing beliefs or mistrust into something, like for example, the source of the message. And since some cases, individuals are more likely to resist, to do counter argue or debate, or perhaps dismiss the message or ignore it. And it's just reinforcing their existing, they're keeping their attitudes rather than to change their attitudes or their beliefs. So, for example, some people during the pandemic health campaigns that there were a lot of emotional campaign, peer appeals message like if you don't get vaccine, you are you're in the risk of dying, or you can die. Or if you do, you can protect your loved ones, or it can protect you if you get the vaccine. So that's really just to make people encouraged to get vaccination. So when people or audience trust the message, of course, they're more likely to get the vaccine. So therefore, the vaccine campaign would be more effective through that emotional appeals to, like, for example, protect your family, so you better get the vaccine. So that's some sort of um so when people mistrust, like if they have a strong opinion about getting vaccines, they have a strong beliefs that vaccines is not safe for them, and that could just harm their body, then of course they would question the campaign, the message. They would try to debate if the vaccine is really good for them. So they are not, instead of being persuaded, then they would counter argue the message campaign. So in this case, emotional persuasion did not change the attitudes, rather it reinforced the resistance of the audience. So third question is, how should we think about the long-term consequences of audience being repeatedly targeted with emotionally charged persuasive messages? So frequent exposure to emotional messages can really have can have a long-term consequences for audience, such as it can make people less responsive. So initially, it can increase engagement, yeah, motivate the audience to do something, but frequency or frequent exposure to that type of message over time, like constant exposure, um, really can reduce someone's sensitivity to that type of message. And of course, they get used to it. Since they are used to it, then they can just, like easy to ignore the message. So regardless, so some cases, it can also cause people fatigue or tired of hearing same thing over and over, like same ads, commercial on TV. So according to with 1992, fear appeals, overexposure to fear can reduce perceived efficacy and increase resistance rather than to comply or compliance. So the long-term impact therefore depends on the frequency, the intensity, and the perceived credibility of the messages. So while emotional persuasion can sometimes be powerful, then the effectiveness can also diminish if it's not used in the right way, or it could if people will overuse it and don't use it to the right audience. That's it. Thank you for listening.